My name is Ginny, also known as 2/3 Lotus, everywhere on the internet. This clip is part of my series, The Poets of Twitch, where I analyze my viewers' writing live on stream. Nothing has been edited out, so you're seeing this exactly as streamed with all of the imperfections and tangents that come with being live. If you want to catch me live or want more information, check out the description. Otherwise, enjoy some excellent writing. Okay, here's a poem, number 7, unnamed, so poem number 7, by Mae7ari. As the flames began to hasten and the matchstick took hold, verdant strands began to burst from the sunken hole. And while the gust carried the heaviness of this hell-bound path, thawing of the arteries kept the heart not quite intact. While crimson flooded the streets of the cities and left nothing aside, the nation's president could not conceive why there was such concern for this affair. Everyone in a ruckus shared for what made the residents so scared. Upon gazing outside, she finally concluded why the lemon drop yields long since raced past. The frequency of emotion revolving around an axis, the frigidness of lonely existence no longer in practice. But why now? The spirit shrieks. Does this occur? How have the strands of light reached past the event horizon? Couldn't you see, the spirit wails, that this was necessary long ago? But there was no answer, the void showed. As she smiled at her screen, the rush of it all began to stream out into the open for all to see. Thus the woman uttered, "I am in love with she? And if I love her, is it because I'm heading into the darkness? Is she the shortcut through the tunnel? For rather than fall into the bottomless pit, I would much rather end on a chapter like this." Poem number 7, by Mae7ari. Y'all still talking about Russian, which sounds like y'all got it figured out. I like the small bit of storytelling in this one. Yeah, I dig this sort of narrative happening. And the near rhymes got you. Near rhymes are fun. I like them. Let's read this again. Or does anyone have any initial thoughts? I don't have anything to say quite yet, but I was deeply into my thoughts, so I missed it. That's why I reread it a couple times. That is exactly why. Make a pause in that one line. Am I in love with she? That's fair. Just in terms of my reading. As the flames... Hold on. Poem number 7, Mae7ari. As the flames began to hasten, and the matchstick took hold, verdant strands began to burst from the sunken hole. And while the gust carried the heaviness of this hell-bound path, thawing of the arteries kept the heart not quite intact. While crimson flooded the streets of the cities and left nothing aside, the nation's president could not conceive why. There was such concern for this affair. Everyone in a ruckus shared for what made the residents so scared. Upon gazing outside, she finally concluded why. The lemon drop yields long since raced past. The frequency of emotion revolving around an axis, the frigidness of lonely existence no longer in practice. But why now, the spirit shrieks, does this occur? How have the strands of light reached past the event horizon? Couldn't you see, the spirit wails, that this was necessary long ago? But there was no answer, the void showed. And as she smiled at her screen, the rush of it all began to stream out into the open for all to see. Thus the woman uttered, I am in love. With she? And if I love her, is it because I'm heading into the darkness? Is she the shortcut through the tunnel? For rather than fall into the bottomless pit, I would much rather end on a chapter like this. Poem number 7 by Mae7ari. I kind of wish that I numbered my poems from the very beginning of when I was writing, because then I would know what number I was on. But I forgot to do that. If you're very new to poetry, number your poems. You don't have to, but it's like, I wish I did. Quite proud of this one, TBH. You should be, Mae7ari. I agree with Stylish Fail. This is nice. And let's see. I'm glad you're feeling better. Sorry I disappeared for a while. I've been hella busy. Author Brian Liu. No worries. Do not fret over that. Welcome. You don't need to be sorry for not being on my Twitch stream. None of you are obligated to be here. I greatly appreciate all of your presences, but not obligated. Things have returned to stability for the most part. Excellent, for the most part. Good ending, says Stylish Fail. I think I agree. I think my favorite part is the last part, says Young Selena. I think I maybe agree. The bottomless pit of limerence. I date mine, Lamau. I sometimes date my poems. Limerence, yes, that being like a romantic crush, but like worse. I know you were out sick for a bit. Yeah, author Brian Liu. It was like before Christmas, I think. And then I took some time off just to rest around the holidays. And then now I'm back in full swing for the new year. So stoked to be like really streaming. The anthology, any submissions right now are considered for it until January, and it's gonna happen probably by March. Not by March, by the end of March. That's the hope. That's where the projections lie. We'll see though. I don't make promises. Let's analyze. So a few people said they liked the last part. So maybe we'll start there. What's happening? Stylish Fail? That I'm talking about? The anthology? We can check your definition of limerence. I'm not going to do it though. So I'm going to start at the end because multiple people said they dig the ending part. And I think the end actually gives some context for the start in this poem. And I really like this move in the poem that we start with this really interesting scene. Flames spreading throughout a street, a city, this mass confusion that is sort of happening as the narrative. And then it sort of shifts looking internally, and then looking to this, like, love. And it's a cool thing. As a love poem, it's, I think, pretty unique. Not just starting, ending, and middling with love. There's some stuff going on. But looking at the end, the nature of this love, as it comes to be, might help us understand maybe where it comes from. And if I love her, is it because I'm heading into the darkness? This line, I think, particularly resonates with me. Is it because I'm heading into the darkness? I mean, this line can have a lot of different meanings. Is it because I'm heading into the darkness? The dark pit of obsessive and destructive natures of limerence. Yes, that is probably one interpretation of this line. Some sort of limerence. And now that I'm writing it on the screen, I will grab the definition. Limerence with an E. State of involuntary obsession with another person. So, that is perhaps one thing. If I love her, is it because I'm heading into the darkness, this cruel obsession that's not necessarily a healthy love? This is something that I have become very wary of myself in life, not becoming so attached, so limerent, perhaps, that another person becomes like heading into a darkness of sorts. The line, I am in love with she, I'm also reading as, I'm in love with the same sex, like gay awakening, and you close the book on, ending on that chapter. Yeah. Gay. I am in love. And then it's like, wait, with what? With a she. And that's some like real gay stuff. And I happen to know that Mae7ari is gay. Gay panic. Gay. Damn, that's gay. Welcome to On the Grass. Sideways pride flag here. And that's true. Lesbian flag. I don't know the lesbian flag because I don't identify with the lesbian flag because I'm like pan-ish. Is that like the one that's like, I don't know what the lesbian flag looks like. So yeah, I think this could in fact be a specific like gay awakening and maybe some sort of, to that degree, like a gay panic before. Perhaps. These are all ideas. All ideas I like. Mostly warm sunset. Okay, the Mae7ari flag. Gotcha. Gay is toothpaste? Yeah. Oh, yeah, the gay flag. Okay. Yep, this makes sense. Pansexual flag is kind of mid in my opinion. As someone who's pan, bi, interchangeably. I don't really like the bisexual flag either. Anyway. So that's one thing. This obsession, perhaps. There's also, maybe if I'm heading into the darkness, is she a shortcut through the tunnel? For rather than fall into the bottomless pit, I would much rather end on a chapter like this. I guess I'll ask you all. Does anyone have sort of different interpretations of this darkness, this tunnel, this pit, other than that of an obsessive limerence love? I maybe do. Maybe I'm not quite there yet. Your wife is Pan. Awesome, author Brian Liu. Yellow, purple, pink. I thought pansexual was yellow, blue, pink. I don't know. Bisexuals have great flag reminds you of hell. Yeah, yellow, blue, and Pepto-Bismol. You do, but you wrote it, so you can't share. Yeah, that's fair, Mae7ari. Okay, so no takers on interpretation here. But regardless, we're characterizing love as some sort of like dark, dangerous, particularly perhaps unknown. These are all darkness. These are all tunnels. But this person perhaps is a shortcut, which is interesting. That kind of makes me think it's a little different than this limerence. Rather fall into the bottomless pit. The darkness, the pit, these things being characterized in the same way. I would much rather end on a chapter like this. Part of me thinks of this as perhaps the darkness, the bottomless pit, constantly being lost, constantly being moving, perhaps in like a fleeting relationships. Because someone being the end to a sort of darkness and bottomless pit of love could perhaps be the, last relationship. Our true love. Life partner. That's maybe an interpretation of this. Not sure yet, though. I bought a bracelet with a magnetic clasp with rings that are the colors in order as my quiet little support thing for my wife. That's awesome, Brian Liu. And as she smiled at her screen, the rush of it all began to stream out into the open for all to see. Thus the woman uttered. And I do agree with this like gay reading. I mean, you specify woman, and then I am in love with she. And this to me just feels like a sort of nice little description of, I mean, basically like texting or calling someone, screen, probably quite literally, and realizing like, oh shit, I like this person. The realization of the love. And I think all of this is like pretty easy to understand, or at least pretty clearly related to love. But as we move into the first lines, like I said, I think these probably could feel a little unrelated. Nico, who got you smiling at your phone? Exactly. So, but why now the spirit shrieks does this occur? How have the strands of light reached past the event horizon? So we have an interesting overlap that might help us understand the pit, the tunnel, the event horizon. This is referring to a black hole. The event horizon specifically, the point beyond which light cannot return. Because there's too much gravity, the black hole sucks everything in. Couldn't you see the spirit wails that this was necessary long ago? But there was no answer, the void showed. So there's this tension. The void, the pit, the tunnel, and something else, perhaps the spirit itself that we have here. The spirit. Let's look at the start, though. Perhaps. I'll keep going back in order. Upon gazing outside, she finally concluded why. The lemon drop yields. long since raced past. The frequency of emotion, revolving around an axis, the frigidness of lonely existence. I guess this is more like the pit. No longer in practice. So, again, also pointing toward, no longer lonely, no longer frigid, no longer in the pit, right? For rather than fall into the bottomless pit. So whatever this love is, seems to be somewhat or potentially in opposition to the pit. While crimson flooded the streets of the cities and left nothing aside. Let's do these two together. As the flames began to hasten, and the matchstick took hold. So, flames. Let's do this. What words do we associate, or what ideas, or what themes do we associate with flames? Literarily, culturally. When we think of flames, what do we think of? I don't know if the flame is going in the right order here, but flames. What do flames represent? What are flames? We will get to the verdant streets, stylish veil. What about flames? What do we think about flames? Hot, red, uncontrollable, dangerous, warmth, passion. Okay, hitting us with like a bunch. Maybe we boil this down. So we have heat. Sure. Passion. Yeah. I'm writing it in red, so I won't write red. And then maybe sort of chaotic, uncontrollable, dangerous, all of this. Those are a lot of things we think of with flames. Anything else? Los Angeles, lately, is probably what we think about when we think about flames. Consuming cities. What else? Anything? Anyone got something to add to what Stylish Veil said? No? Cooking? Yeah, cooking. We cook with flames. There's a sort of like creation and progress, like science. We think about like the first people making fire. This is an association we have. Cigarettes? Probably not here, but yes, an association. Cigs. You said passion, but perhaps something slightly different. Desire? Burning for someone? In the beginning of sparks represent a sign of crushing to you. Yeah, that desire. So sparks, something a little bit of excitement. Energy, excitement. Maybe I'll put that. I think that's kind of what a crush is like, being very excited over the idea of someone. Energetic, all of that. So that's good. A lot of things, and usually like a kind of, probably a slightly more positive look at attraction. We're talking about like excitement, passion, desire, and some of these things can be a little bad. They can burn us, but probably more positive than the darkness and the cold. Definitely. In fact, the flame is something that directly overcomes darkness. Light. Did we put that here? Did someone say light? No, no one said light. Light. Flames. That's a thing. A little gay panic. A little, I should seek this person actually. Oh, I see. Yeah, like that. That little bit of, I mean, it's this tension. It's a desire for something, but then like you kind of stay away from fire as well, which maybe makes this a perfect metaphor. And then actually considering the rest of the effing poem. Yeah, I think fire works really well here. And I'm like, I'm off. As the flames began to hasten and the matchstick took hold. So that's like another thing. Matchstick is like the beginning, right, of fire. So maybe those little sparks. Verdant strands began to burst from the sunken hole. So, sunken hole, something similarly cold, decrepit in the depths. The blue against our red. I think similarly, being characterized similarly to these pits, these black holes, this frigid, lonely existence. Verdant strands, then, almost like fire, this explosion of life, bursting, right? Life, energy. The reclaiming of that which is kind of, the wood turns back alive. That idea, something dead, something cold, being sort of revived in a way. Revival is in fact also associated with fire. When we have the phoenix, phoenixes rising from the ashes, a little symbol of revival. And also, I mean, I wrote a poem that was about fire as something that clears out a forest, right? Burns it to the ground. But forest fires often kind of reseed and rejuvenate forests. So fire is in many ways related to revival. And while the gust carried the heaviness of this hell-bound path, the gust, right? Something cold, uncaring, heaviness. Hell is interesting, because hell kind of has this fire association. Some people also have hell as like a cold death thing. But thawing of the arteries that kept the heart not quite intact. So the heart, of course, as a symbol of love, being thawed by this warmth, this coming to love something. Warming up to the world. Think of like hardened hearts or cold hearts. We're moving away from this into love. While crimson fire flooded the streets of the cities and left nothing aside, the nation's president could not conceive why. There was such a concern for this affair. Everyone in a ruckus shared for what made the residents so scared. You're off to bed, Sageville? Have a good night. Does anyone have thoughts on this stanza? I think I do, but I want to hear y'all first. What do we think about this one? I like this stanza a lot. Crimson flooding the streets of the cities. What is the city? What is the president of this city? Are we talking about a literal city? Are we talking about something else? What could it be? You don't think it's a literal city. I don't either. Except it is a literal city right now. It's Los Angeles. I'm gonna keep saying that. You're thinking Inside Out vibes. So like the president as like the kind of person inside your head and then governing, would that mean the city is the body? Is that what you're thinking, Nico? Or like the city in the mind? Is it all contained in the mind? What's the relationship of this city and this president? The city is the rest of the nervous system. Okay, yeah. This is what I was thinking too. Like, this is my thought. The president, the person in control, watching this sort of uncontrolled thing come over the place that they have, like, I don't know, quote, dominion over. This uncontrollable fire, this warmth, this love. And I mean, we even have, like, a fair as a little innuendo. This could be referring to, like, a physical, like, flushing, blushing. Right? Red in the cheeks, crimson, fire, feeling warm. So that could be one thing. Or just like, that passion, that attraction, that desire. Or, blood vessels, residents being like neurons, brain cells. Yeah, also gay panic. There would be a sort of panic associated with this warmth because it's coming to a realization that is probably not previously accepted. It's something new. Being gay. And that's like scary, and it's alluring, and it's warm, comforting, like a fire. But also like a freaking fire burning your entire body because, like, you're in love. Upon gazing outside, she finally concluded why the lemon drop yields, long since raised past, the frequency of emotion revolving around an axis. The frigidness of lonely existence no longer in practice. I'm going to get to this stanza and circle back to the end of the poem after a quick break. Practice some self-care. Don't watch these advertisements. I'll be right back. Hey chat. Hey chat, you missed me? I'm back. I am still Jenny. Still the poet of Twitch on 2/3 Lotus. Twitch.tv, that one. Welcome back. We are still reading poem number 7 by Mae7ari, and we're going to read it again through top to bottom and then look at some more analysis. Poem number 7. As the flames began to hasten and the matchstick took hold, verdant strands began to burst from the sunken hole, and while the gust carried the heaviness of this hell-bound path, thawing of the arteries kept the heart not quite intact. While crimson flooded the streets of the cities and left nothing aside, the nation's president could not conceive why there was such concern for this affair. Everyone in a ruckus shared for what made the residents so scared. Upon gazing outside, she finally concluded why the lemon drop yields long since raced past, the frequency of emotion revolving around an axis, the frigidness of lonely existence no longer in practice. But why now, the spirit shrieks, does this occur? How have the strands of light reached past the event horizon? Couldn't you see, the spirit wails, that this was necessary long ago? But there was no answer, the void showed. And as she smiled at her screen, the rush of it all began to stream out into the open for all to see. Thus the woman uttered, I am in love with she. And if I love her, is it because I'm heading into the darkness? Is she the shortcut through the tunnel, for rather than fall into the bottomless pit, I would much rather end on a chapter like this. Oh, so good. Poem 7 by Mae7ari. I want to say a few more things in this. The heart not quite intact. I think this line is like lovely. I'm a big fan of this. Thawing of the arteries kept the heart not quite intact. You know, the heart was sort of still functional when it was frozen over before thawing and finding love. It worked, but it wasn't quite intact, and it never has been, perhaps, not knowing this love. And now that it is coming to feel that warmth, it might actually reach that point. Also, Dylan, welcome in. How are you? Your poem yesterday was excellent. And then there actually could be a sort of physical city in a sense, like a double meaning here in the poem. There was such concern, everyone in a ruckus shared for what made the residents so scared. If we think of a physical group of people, a community, there could be a feeling of, like Nico was saying at the start, like a gay panic, but not just in the person who is grappling with their identity, but the people outside, right? Outside, who may judge this person, like projecting maybe that uneasiness onto the world around them and seeing it as well, because this is something that really still is happening. A lot of hate toward queer people in America, which is where Mae7ari is from, as far as I'm aware. I think. Sometimes it's good to know where the poet is from. You're from a red state. Yeah, I get the vibe of some like religious trauma as well happening in this poem. Like, not necessarily that like you would have it, but like some religious like pain against the queerness here. So we talk about hell as like genuinely Christian, and you know, this gust, the flames, carry the heaviness of a hell-bound path, right? This is queerness. Being gay condemns you to hell, the fun place where everyone goes when they die and everyone's queer. And so, looking toward the end, I think this makes sense. If I love her, is it because I'm heading into the darkness? The darkness, right, of some kind of sin, if we're talking religiously. And we do talk about, like, the spirit shrieking and wailing against what it knows. Bottomless pit, hell and endless, the pits of hell. Is she the shortcut, though, through the tunnel? Does this love, does this liberation of queerness and identity sort of free me from this entire condemnation of religion? Because I don't know. How could you remain in that understanding in a place like that? And upon gazing outside, she finally concluded why. The lemon drop yields long since raced past. Author Brian Liu. Yeah, we Moroccans suck. I'm embarrassed. You don't need to be. You're a not bad American. And don't be embarrassed. Be desirous of change. Be outraged at the systems that be, and do something about them. So the lemon drop yields long since raced past. Lemon drops as a symbol. Does anyone have thoughts on meaning of lemon drops? We can also look this one up. I don't have any immediate, symbolic associations with these. But it could just be, what I know, what I'm familiar with. What's the deal with lemon drops? Do these have a symbolism to them? If no one knows, I'll just look it up. Mae7ari knows what Mae7ari means when Mae7ari talks about lemon drops. Lemon drop. This is something you can just look up. No, not really. Lemon drop melting is a metaphor used to refer to troubles disappearing. It's candy. Okay, it's sweet. 19th century. What is this madness? 20th century. WTF. 2020. Yo, chat, is this real? Yep. So, these are candy. These are sweet. Finally concluded why the lemon drop yields long since raced past. So the sweetness has raced past. I think maybe this is to say the sweetness of life has left her behind in being stagnant and still and stuck in the depths. But the frigidness of this lonely existence, also the frequency of emotion revolving around an axis. What is revolving around an axis? Well, that is going in circles. Messed up my axial tilt. Right? Going around this axis is a circular motion. And so in the past, perhaps, there was this struggle of emotion, not being able to understand, going in circles around an axis, but breaking free of this, whereas, perhaps our lemon drops, our goodness, has raced past, but now we're free from our circular existence, our orbit, to find actual love and sort of freedom and liberation. Maybe. Makes sense with this sort of... I like the axis and the event horizon. You have some sort of space, astronomical stuff happening, which is fun. But why now, the spirit shrieks, does this occur? How have the strands of light reached past the event horizon? So there again, The event horizon, a black hole, this darkness, this denial of self. This is very common in queerness, to deny oneself. And yet light has somehow reached past it and illuminated something that could not return. And couldn't you see this was necessary long ago to also speak to a denial of self and like an awakening? But there was no answer, the void showed. The void couldn't see. The only thing I'll add is that I'm going to college for astrophysics. That's super cool, Mae7ari. Astrophysics is sick. When I was a kid, a very little kid, I was this like precocious kid, and I said, I wanna be an astrophysicist. When I was in like grade school, because I loved space. Maybe I'll read a poem after. I have a poem that also uses event horizon and is about kind of like love and stuff. So maybe you would appreciate it and you would want to hear it. I have it memorized. And she smiled at her screen. I actually, just like a little thing, I really like the use of screen here because it's again like light. You know, we think of her face probably glowing with this light of the screen in this. Welcome, High Caliber. The rush of it all began to stream out into the open for all to see. Thus the woman uttered, I'm in love. With she? And if I love her, is it because I'm heading into the darkness? All of this condemnation, maybe the other darkness, the darkness of judgment, the hell-bound path of queerness? Or is she the shortcut? Is she a freedom of identity? For rather than fall into the bottomless pit, I would much rather end on a chapter like this. And maybe this is just me like trying to force the religious connection, but like chapter, thinking about like, well, what's a like religious book, Bible, but like ending on a different chapter of like queerness being okay, as opposed to like a chapter, the condemnation from a book that you'll be going to hell. But even just ending on a chapter like this, breaking out of one's circular existence and coming to the closure and conclusion of accepting one's identity. Yay. We love that. I'm fairly confident about this interpretation. At least I like it. Now, the Google form has questions. Mainly I just want to know if I've improved at all, yes. And if I showed the scenes properly. I have no specific questions beyond that. The poem I'm submitting is dedicated to me and my girlfriend, so keep that in mind. So, a few things, I guess. I mean, I think you absolutely improved. If we go back to your other poem, which was a bit ago, you know, I'm going to read it. What was it? Yet another love poem. Also a love poem. Love is fickle. Sometimes the word is too dull. Not suitable for the occasion, not worth much of anything. And that's when you know you were never in love. Other times love is bright, like a firecracker. The time ends up passing like a blur, and you end up with a partner rather than an acquaintance. I guess this dance is for us, says one in particular. And yet at other times it is quiet, but meaningful. A relation of peace and quiet, yet blissful. It's not a matter of sparks or extraordinary Disney magic. It's merely a companionship that will test time. But who is to say these are the only types of love? You could love your daughter or son. You could be loved by friends, family, even strangers. And even if you're not beloved by many, it's all right with you. Love is fickle. Sometimes it's loud. Sometimes quiet. Sometimes dull. Sometimes it's friendship. Sometimes it's your family. But regardless, love is universal. Treasure it. And I think, or yet another love poem. I think the issue that a lot of us kind of took with that poem was that it was just very descriptive and didn't have a lot of your personal emotion. And this one, I mean, it talks about a grapple with a frozen over heart, a hellbound path, these like tensions, this great metaphor of fire and cold, uh, queerness, which is sick. We like queerness here. And like so much more genuinely like personal. And the interesting thing is, right, when I read something personal to you, it makes me so much more excited to like pull emotion out of it. Whereas something that is broad and kind of platitudes, tends to be less personally engaging, even though I might not share these experiences. I can understand that a person has gone through these experiences and in some way learn from this poem. So, in terms of like the nature of the poem, absolutely uh, so much more like deep and nuanced. It's a great interpretation, IMO, but not the author's interpretation. Let me know when you can talk about it. Yeah. And then, I mean, like some of these lines are. I mean, like I think a lot of them like tie together your fire, your depth metaphor pretty well. Uh, Lemon drop yields feels a little like out of place as a metaphor, but maybe it's a specific reference to something in like this relationship. And yeah, love. I dig it. This one I feel is like so much improved from the other one, to be clear. And yeah, if you have any questions, if anyone has questions, now is like the time to ask. And if some of those questions require your intent of the poem, or maybe how you've communicated that, then absolutely you can share that, Mae7ari. And I'm really curious because I am like really happy with how all these metaphors connect in like my interpretation, but yours is different, which is always fun. Any questions from anyone else or comments for Mae7ari, as she is probably like typing things up. All right, you pretty much nailed it, but the religious aspect was not intended. You're raised atheist and pretty sheltered from it. That makes sense. Absolutely. I think whenever you talk about queerness, there's like some people can just like automatically associate this as like something that religion doesn't like, right? So, and you use hell, you have spirit, you have like the bottomless pit. But I mean, yeah, like the religious, I don't think it screams religious. The poem, the poem doesn't like say like, oh, this is absolutely a religious poem. Lemon drop yields yield signs. Moving. Makes sense. Dude, I'm so bummed. Turbo Granny Totes made off with my junk. Such a downer, man. That's a Dan to down, right? I watched one episode of it. Okay, so but in terms of like the queer awakening, that's pretty much what you're going for. And I don't think having like the slight um the slight like religious possibility is a problem, particularly as as a poem about queerness. The fact that some queer person could read this and feel that they're seen religiously, some person who didn't relate to that could feel like not seen or like
just not have to have religion in the poem, like, is really nice. And you do kind of have to dig for that meaning. Like, I think I only got that after the third read, which means you start, like, pulling in random stuff. The nation's president was originally intended as a brain. Let's go. It is kind of satisfying to, like, figure out what, like kind of be on the same line as the author. So the religious meaning is great to you. Awesome. Do you have any questions in terms of like editing or just stuff or anything I said that didn't make sense? High Caliber, you're binge watching Dan to Dan. That's cool. So, yeah, any questions, I guess, other than just like, because you did improve. That was the one question you had in the forum, and yes, you absolutely did. And this poem's a banger. It's really sweet. What does everyone think of the poem? Honestly, I don't have any questions, but editing would help. Okay. I mean, editing would help, like, editing about what? What do you feel is incomplete that wants to be edited? Are there parts that you feel are weaker, that you like less? Because when I read a poem, I see it, I normally like, oh, this is like a complete work. So then it's hard for me to edit without some direction. Which is why like questions is helpful to me. The only issue I have is with the lemon drop yields, and the rest is strong. Okay. Gazing outside, she finally concluded why. The lemon drop yields long since raced past. So, we're in a car, we're like driving, things are racing past. But what... I guess what are you trying to say with the yield signs? I mean, yield sign is like something to slow down, and we're instead racing past, which is maybe to speak to this coming to understanding, quickly moving, speed of light, frequency of emotion, like go, 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 things are changing in the brain. And I think in that case, if the yield is like something of slowness and like maybe something we are escaping and getting past because it's reminiscent of the old, of the dark, using lemon drop, which I think probably has positive associations as like a candy, it might not make sense in that context. If that's what you're going for with the lemon drop yields, the yield signs blowing past them in a new speed of understanding. So you could use, the slowness. Okay. So, Upon gazing outside, she finally concluded why. The lemon drop yields long since raced past. Frequency of emotion, revolving on an axis, the frigidness of a lonely existence no longer a practice. Slow yellow things. Does anyone in chat have any ideas how we could... I mean, it could just be another way to describe the yield sign that gives it more connection to the darkness, but also describe the yield sign itself. Triangle. They are yellow triangles. That is, for those who are not in America, yield sign. The funny thing is sometimes they're red too. These yield. This is what we're referring to. Yellow yield sign. And because I do think it doesn't really work very well to just say like the yield signs long since raced past, because everything else is very descriptive and feels like that line is probably too short at that point. But Hmm. I don't know. I might be kind of stuck on this one. Yields. TBH already submitted this to a poetry contest, so I cannot edit the submission. But yeah, I mean, there's no reason to not like edit and try to feel like better about our poems, even if you've already submitted it. Uh, if you wanted to lean into like axis and event horizon, you could talk about like geometric yields and stops to refer to, one's a triangle, one's an octagon. So, and then talking about like geometric stuff and all of that feels kind of connected to the mathy physics space stuff. That would be that's the direction my mind is kind of going, because a lot of yellow things are like fast, and I'm not finding like a good yellow slow association. But geometric tends to be very structured, very stagnant, kind of akin to, and when you have like event horizon and your axis as things that represent the slowness and the darkness, using something that relates to those might work for your poem. That's my idea. Take it or leave it, but I would say something like the geometric yields and stops, or just yields. But I think also like yields. I think I like having yields and something. I like the yields part, but I need a better yellow descriptor. So you just want to change the description of yellow. Sure. You want to specifically talk about them as yellow. So one thing I'll say is like there is very strongly kind of two colors happening in this poem. Red fire, and then like this dark black blue pit. It's like light dark. And like this is sort of one thought of like the verdant strands as well, is these things like being different colors literally sort of diverges from what the rest of the poem is doing. And but it sounds like you want to stick with yellow, which is fine. But we can just look this up. Like, first of all, just like words for yellow. For yellow. Lemon, amber, gold. Amber's kind of good. Amber is, sticky, fossilized, captures things. That might be better than lemon drop. But otherwise, amber works. I'm not really great, admittedly, at helping people with word choice. I can talk well about like thematic stuff and metaphor, but at a certain point, like I can think of words that I might put in this place, but it's completely different from what you are going for with the poem. High caliber, if you're great with word choice, then help Mae7ari instead of talking about Dan. A show which I only know a tiny bit about has nothing to do with this poem. But I don't know. Any other questions, any other things that you want help with, Mae7ari, before we end this analysis? This should be a lesson for all of you. I am much less able to give assistance with less questions and comments and stuff. Where is it? Where is what? Yeah, of course, Mae7ari, and thank you for submitting. It's a great poem. I really enjoyed it. And I'll read it one more time. This is poem number 7, Unnamed, by Mae7ari. As the flames began to hasten and the matchstick took hold, verdant strands began to burst from the sunken hole, and while the gust carried the heaviness of this hell-bound path, thawing of the arteries kept the heart not quite intact, while crimson flooded the streets of the cities and left nothing aside, the nation's president could not conceive why there was such concern for this affair. Everyone in a ruckus shared for what made the residents so scared. Upon gazing outside, she finally concluded why the lemon drop yields long since raced past the frequency of emotion revolving around an axis, the frigidness of lonely existence, no longer in practice. But why now? The spirit shrieks. Does this occur? How have the strands of light reached past the event horizon? Couldn't you see, the spirit wails, that this was necessary long ago? But there was no answer, the void showed. And as she smiled at her screen, the rush of it all began to stream out into the open for all to see. Thus the woman uttered, I am in love. With she? And if I love her, is it because I'm heading into the darkness? Is she the shortcut through the tunnel, for rather than fall into the bottomless pit, I would much rather end on a chapter like this. Poem number 7, Untitled, by Mae7ari. Thank you so much for submitting. Really excellent work. I enjoyed this one a lot.
Thank you for watching. I encourage you to check out the rest of the series, follow if you enjoyed, and stop by Twitch if you want to share your own work. See you there.